we know it apparently. Well, I guess it depends on who you ask, be they a soothsayer, mind reader, or just a plain old pessimist. Heck, I know I still have a lot that I want to accomplish before this lifetime ends. By the way, I'm Alexa, resident ookie spooky girly, and today I'm gonna try and take a leaf out of a mind reading friend of mine's book and try to predict the end of the world as we know it. Question for you, when do you think the world's gonna end? You know, we've predicted 2012 and whatnot. And because I'm in a fun mood, let's start off today with the end of Putin as we know it. Yes, I'm aware that's a bit of a bold statement, so just bear with me here, hold your horses. For those who might not be aware, Putin is a former KGB agent who has been president of Russia since 2012. Now, to go back to that KGB thing, yeah, he worked as KGB foreign intelligence for 16 years, rising to the ranks of lieutenant colonel before resigning in 1991 to begin a political career in St. Petersburg. He's held continuous positions as president or prime minister since 1999, which is about as far back as I can remember, seeing as I was this old at the time. He was prime minister from 1999 to 2000, and from 2008 to 2012, and president from 2000 to 2008, and well, since 2012. He is the longest serving Russian or Soviet leader since Joseph Stalin, and that's not exactly a cute or fun comparison to make. His rise to power was pretty suspicious, with many believing he or his supporters were behind the apartment house explosions in 1999 in Moscow, Buinsk, and Volgodonsk, which provided a pretext for the Second Chechen War and catapulted Putin into the presidency. The evidence is overwhelming that they were carried out by the Russian Federal Security Service, or FSB for short. Russian human rights defenders Sergei Yushchenkov, Shekochikin, Anna Politkovskaya, and Alexander Litvinenko worked to shed light on the apartment explosions, but they all meant mysterious and suspicious deaths between 2003 and 2006. Oh, also, back in 2001, we're going to backtrack for a second, he met with 21 of the richest men in Russia, also known as oligarchs for their spectacular fortunes that were obtained through shady deals, outright corruption, even killings, who at that point had seized control of much of Russia's economy and increasingly its fledgling, democracy. But now their nation's newly elected president, Putin, wanted to tell them, face to face, who was really in charge. He offered them a deal. Bend to my authority, stay out of my way, and you can keep your mansions, super yachts, private jets, and multi-billion-dollar corporations. In the coming years, folks who undermine Putin would be thrown into a Siberian prison, or be forced into exile, or, you guessed it, die in suspicious circumstances. Now those who remained loyal, and who got filthy rich during Putin's long reign, became like ATM machines for the president and his allies. Okay, after all that context about how Putin is a man not to be trifled with, I like to make sure I'm clear. Time to chat about the prediction. For our first prediction today, we turn to famed mystic Baba Vanga. For those who might be unaware of her, yes, I will give context, it's me. She was a Bulgarian mystic and herbalist who passed away in 1996, and she predicted her own death, the death of Princess Diana, and more. She became blind when she was very young and spent most of her life in the Rupit area of the Kuzo Mountains in Bulgaria. In the late 1970s and 80s, she was widely known in Eastern Europe for her abilities of clairvoyance and precognition. Before she passed, she left a list of predictions until the year 5079, and she's been pretty spot on so far. So she has predicted an assassination attempt on Putin by a fellow countryman next, year. That was wrong. So she's predicted an attempt on Putin by a fellow countryman this year. I don't see him going down without any kind of fight, which means if this prediction comes true, Russia is about to cause a whole lot of hell. Well, more than they are already, which doesn't sound good to me. Okay. On that note, let's move on to something a little less explosive, or controversial, the possibility of a nuclear explosion in the UK. Yes, I think I'm funny. And also was kind of kidding there. According to Nostradamus' predictions for this year, a devastating nuclear explosion will cause climactic changes and significant depopulation in many European countries. Now, if you don't know who Nostradamus was, he was a French doctor and astrologer. He contributed his knowledge during the plague, famous for his prophecies in which he anticipated the future of humanity until the end of the world. He perhaps most famously predicted the attack on Twin Towers. Now, for centuries, and right up until today, his prophecies are studied around the world and announce events that are yet to come. Over the years, his predictions have been associated with important events that have occurred. Many people believe that Nostradamus has predicted the future, and that his predictions, they're pretty accurate, which is kind of alarming given the current global situation. The direct quote reads as follows: "For 40 years the rainbow will not appear. For 40 years it will be seen every day. The dry earth will grow drier and great floods when it is seen." Now this prediction worries me, especially after how much nuclear explosions have changed the world in the past, and we're still in a world that's recovering from the last global panini, if you know what I mean. Nuclear war could yield unprecedented human death tolls and habitat destruction. Detonating large numbers of nuclear weapons would have an immediate short-term and long-term effects on, the climate, potentially causing cold weather known as nuclear winter. And as somebody who shivers in -15, I don't want it to get colder. In 1982, Brian Martin estimated that a US-Soviet nuclear exchange might kill only 400 to 500 million directly. Once again, million, mostly in the United States, Europe, and Russia, and maybe a small little several hundred million more through follow-up consequences in those same areas. Many scholars believe that a global thermonuclear war with Cold War-era stockpiles, or even with the current smaller stockpiles, might lead to, no biggie, the extinction of the human race. The International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War believe that nuclear war could indirectly contribute to human extinction via secondary effects, including environmental consequences, societal breakdown, and economic collapse. It has been estimated that a relatively small-scale nuclear exchange between India and Pakistan involving 100, Hiroshima yield weapons, we all know that word, could cause a nuclear winter and kill more than a billion people. The world is still feeling the fallout from the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, and that was back in 1986, which was almost 40 years ago now. That accident occurred during a test of the steam turbine's ability to power the energy feedwater pumps in the event of a simultaneous loss of external power and coolant pipe rupture. Following an accidental drop in reactor power to near zero, the operators restarted the reactor in preparation for the turbine test with a prohibited control rod configuration. Due to a variety of factors, this action resulted in a power surge at the base of the reactor, which brought about the rupture of reactor components and the loss of coolant. Now all of that led to steam explosions and a meltdown, which destroyed the containment building. This was followed by a reactor core fire, which lasted until May 4th of 1986, during which airborne radioactive contaminants were spread through the USSR and Europe. In response to the initial accident, a 10-kilometer radius exclusion zone was created 36 hours after the accident, from which approximately 49,000 people were evacuated, primarily from Pripyat. This exclusion zone was later increased to a radius of 30 kilometers, from which an additional 68,000 people were evacuated. Following the explosion, which killed 2 engineers and severely burned 2 more, an emergency operation to put out the fires and stabilize the surviving reactor began, during which 237 workers were hospitalized, of whom 134 exhibited symptoms of acute radiation syndrome. Among those hospitalized, 28 died within the following 3 months, and in the following 10 years, 14 more, 9 of whom had been hospitalized, died of various causes mostly unrelated to radiation exposure. The most widely cited study conducted by the World Health Organization in 2006 predicted 9,000 cancer-related fatalities in Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. If it wasn't crystal clear enough, we don't need a repeat of that anytime soon. Thank you very much. So next up we have a prediction that might be personally the scariest in my book, the possibility of China going to war. So already last year, 2023, China made headlines with its geopolitical role, and according to Nostradamus, it appears that this quest for power and broader international collaborations is going to continue into this year. Alright, let's go with the quote here. China wages war in a naval battle with the red adversary becoming pale with fear, putting the great ocean in dread. And he's not the only one saying this. Baba Vanga also has some predictions about China for this year. A mighty dragon is due to take over the planet, if you believe what Vanga predicts, and 3 giants, possibly Russia, China, and India, will unite. Sounds depressingly action-packed. Thanks! The most probable spark is a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. So the current president of China has said unifying Taiwan with mainland China must be achieved. His regime has become sufficiently strong, military speaking, and also economically and industrially, to take Taiwan and directly challenge, let's say, the United States for regional supremacy? And challenge, the United States for regional supremacy? The United States has vital strategic interests at stake. A successful Chinese invasion of Taiwan would punch a hole in the US and allied chain of defenses in the region, seriously undermining America's strategic position in the Western Pacific, and would probably cut off US access to world-leading semiconductors and other critical components manufactured in Taiwan, as President Joe Biden has stated repeatedly that he would defend Taiwan. But leaders in Washington also need to avoid stumbling carelessly into a war with China, because it would be unlike anything ever faced by Americans. US citizens have grown accustomed to sending the military off to fight far from home. But China is a different kind of foe. A military that is, economically and technologically capable of making a war felt in the States. The military scenario alone is daunting. China would probably launch a lightning, air, sea, and cyber assault to seize control of key strategic targets on Taiwan within hours before the US and its allies can intervene. China also has more than 1,350 ballistic and cruise missiles poised to, strike the US and allied forces in Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and American-held territories in the Western Pacific. Then there's the sheer difficulty the United States would face waging war thousands of miles across the Pacific against an adversary that has the world's largest navy and Asia's biggest air force. That's just yikes on yikes on yikes on yikes. I'm terrified. You should be too. Alrighty folks, are you ready for this next possibility? It's a little lighter. The fall of the royal family. That's not something I thought I'd see in this lifetime, but here we are. I know when Queen Elizabeth passed away a couple years ago, the general consensus over Charles taking the throne definitely wasn't enthusiastic. Well, don't worry folks. According to both Nostradamus and Baba Vanga, not only will he be replaced this year, apparently Henry's gonna take the throne. I didn't see that on my bingo card. According to the Complete Prophecies for the Future book, in which Nostradamus' visions were all prescribed, he successfully predicted that Queen Elizabeth II would die around 2022, at the age of approximately 96. He later went on to reveal that Harry would be the one to take the throne after the abdication of Charles III, meaning Queen Elizabeth's death will cause major changes in the monarchy. One of the passages in the prophecies says that a king of the Isles will be driven out by force. Yeah, if we're gonna take his word for it, the relatively new monarch's already on the chopping block. Specific verbiage states that one who will have no mark of a king assuming the throne, which should make for an interesting year of gossip reports. The reason for Charles's future abdication would be, according to the predictions, his advanced age. As for William, the predictions evoke an incapacity that would send his brother on the throne until the young George is old enough to be king. Nostradamus also predicted a celestial fire on the royal building. This indicates a radical transformation in the world, so stay tuned for whatever that could be. Expect some sort of chaos involving the new king, because why not? Finally, to end our list today, climate disasters to end it all. I feel like with the state of global warming, this one should be obvious, but it'll be a big contributor to the end of the world when it does happen. You don't need to be a psychic, prophet, or mystic to be very much aware that we are deep in the hellscape of a climate crisis with record high temperatures, wildfires, droughts, and marine life extinction dotting the horizon. Like, I just finished working outside in what was the mildest winter I've ever worked in. Time to consult good old Nostradamus again though for this one, just to back up my thoughts. Experts point out this line: the dry earth will grow more parched, there will be great floods when it is seen, referring to this year. He also predicted extreme weather events and world hunger, very great famine through a pestiferous wave, to be precise, and he's not alone. Baba Vanga has also chimed in and said, ditto. She has foretold that there will be terrifying weather events and natural disasters this year. And that brings us to the end of our time, and I'm not sure if I need to go find a bunker to hide in yet or not. You let me know what you think in the comments, and while you're at it, if you could help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more Doomsday comedy from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.